Okay, very good. Hello, everyone, and welcome to our program, Winter Birding on Fire Island. My name is Tara Moran. I'm a librarian at Mastic Mauritius Shirley Community Library. And today we have Patricia Ryley. She is a park ranger at the Fire Island National Seashore. Thank you. And she has been with the Fire Island National Seashore for 7 years after a career in the U.S. Navy and as teacher. She also has a degree in biology, and we're very happy to have her with us today. Pat, if you're ready, take it away.
Yeah, sure. So,
one thing to say at the beginning, as people have questions for Pat, please feel free to put them into the chat. We will be answering the questions as we go along, and definitely towards the end. Okay, thanks. Sorry, Pat, go ahead.
No worries. Can everybody hear me okay? All right, thumbs up. Excellent. Okay, good evening, everybody. This program will give you some very basic tips on bird identification. Thank you very much to the Mastic Mauritius Shirley Community Library for inviting me to speak tonight. And I'm hoping that you might even be inspired to participate in the annual Great Backyard Bird Count, which happens this upcoming weekend. Every February, it's a worldwide effort program for citizen scientists to contribute data. It's run by the Cornell Lab of Ornithology, the National Audubon Society, and Birds Canada. And I'm going to actually show a really brief video, another separate PowerPoint at the end of this from the Cornell Lab of Ornithology that talks about how to participate in the Great Backyard Bird Count. And Fire Island National Seashore is having a program on Saturday, and so is the library over at the Wertheim. So if you can participate in any of those, or even look out the window at the birds in your yard, you're going to be able to participate in this. And it's really a pretty cool thing to see how the data is entered and used. So I'm going to start my PowerPoint now. Okay, so the basics of birding, really, really basic. What do you need to get started bird watching? Well, a field guide is a great idea. There's a lot of them. I'm sure the library has them. I use a Peterson's field guide. There's also online resources. For example, the Merlin Bird app, and that's from the Cornell Lab of Ornithology. And that's an app, and I'll mention all these at the sort of the end of the program, but it's a way to identify birds. And during the Great Backyard Bird Count this weekend, people are going to enter data through that as well. Another really useful tool for bird watching is binoculars. They don't have to be fancy, expensive binoculars, and you don't need them. I mean, I personally have a hard time with binoculars. I'd rather start with my naked eye, and then if I really want to look at something closer, I use my binoculars. And then get outside. You can also look out your window. The Great Backyard Bird Count counts birds in 15-minute increments or more. So you can actually sit in your rocking chair, look out the window at your bird feeder, count birds for 15 minutes and participate in this program. So identifying birds. You see a lot of birds that look a lot alike, maybe flying in the bushes. You see them overhead, in the trees, under the bird feeder. My first tip on identifying birds is become familiar with the birds in your area. So where are you? Where are you located? What town? What state? Are you near the water? Are you near a mountain or a field? And what would the usual suspects be? What would we expect to see in the location you're at? There's some you might not expect to see or be certain that you really wouldn't see. So the first step is to learn the gist of what you might expect to see. So what is gist? And this is not the slide I want to see next. Sorry. Gist is the main point or part, sort of the general impression. And there's now I'm going to skip ahead in my PowerPoint because I can't, there we are. So gist is the main point or the essence. Gist, which sounds a lot alike, is a general impression of size and shape. So both of these terms are used by birders, and they both have to do with birding by impression. What's your first impression, and what is the size, shape, and what do you expect to see where you are? This is where that Merlin bird app is really helpful, because it starts with all different sizes. What does it look like? Where is it? So how many of these birds can you identify? You can put it in the chat. Can you recognize all of them? One of them? Most of them? I think that'd be interesting if you can type in the chat.
While people are typing, someone has asked if the Merlin bird app is a free app. I was just looking that up. It looks like it is free, right?
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. So. Anybody get them all? Anybody put a 3 in the box?
Yes, I see 3.
All right.
Nancy says blue jay, cardinals, and mockingbird.
Yeah,
maybe a
so
cat
there
bird?
we are. Here I've identified them. So northern cardinals, the male and the female are different. And blue jays are pretty distinctive. And a northern mockingbird is also very common in this area. And I don't have a photo of it, but those of you who've seen these, when they fly and when they're displaying for their, they're being territorial, you see white wing patches. So these are birds, all very similar in size, quite different in appearance. And so this is where you can start. Start with birds that you know, and these are easy ones to count at your feeder. So impression. Here's a very impressive bird. And we're going to look at where would you see it? Well, you would see this over the Carmen's River. So it's nearby. It's a large, dark bird, very slow, powerful wing beats, a white tail. Okay. Do we know what it is? Raise your hand. And yes, there it is. It's a bald eagle. And these are local to our area. Lots of people say, oh, I've never seen one. If you hang out down by the Carmen's River or in the Wertheim Preserve, dusk and dawn, they're out there. They're out there hunting. And one of the indicators, let's say it's far away and you can't really see the head and tail. The wings are straight. They're level when they fly. The wingtips, if you look at the wingtips, they're separated like fingers. So that you would definitely see even from a distance. And they have a white head. So of course, if they have the white head and the white tail and this large yellow beak, yes, it's a bald eagle. And these are really big birds. The females have a wingspan of 8 feet. The males, 6 feet. So if you are 6 feet tall, about 6 feet tall, and you stretch your arms out to either side like an airplane, that's about 6 feet, all right? Your own arm span is about the same as your height. So imagine how big those birds are. They're not very heavy. They, 15 pounds maybe. They're not really heavy. Interesting, they mate for life. They live 15 to 25 years. And it takes 4 to 5 years to get that white head and tail. So if you see a large, dark bird with level wings in flight, a yellow beak, even if its head and tail are not white, you can be pretty certain that it's a bald eagle, even if you don't see the white head and tail. And interestingly, in the 1960s, these were very close to extinction. But through efforts to remove certain pesticides from use, in 2007, they were removed from the threatened species list. So they're no longer threatened, but they're still fairly uncommon. All right, so let's just complicate this a little bit. We have a really big black bird out there. The wings are more level. We can pretty much guess that's a bald eagle. but the wings held up in a V. Even if you couldn't see its head, you'd be able to tell this is not a bald eagle, but it's a turkey vulture. So we do have turkey vultures here on Long Island. They're more commonly seen over highways because they're carrion eaters. The bald eagle will hunt over fields, but they eat a lot of fish, which is why we see them on the river. So over a highway, you see a big black bird, probably a turkey vulture or a buzzard, and you can tell by the V shape to the wings. But it's not always easy. Here's another bird, and okay, I've labeled it. It's a black vulture. These have started to come to Long Island in the last maybe 8 years. They have level flight wings now, but a little bit of white near the wingtips. So the big clue on this one would be where you saw it. If you saw a big black bird and you couldn't see white on it anywhere and it was flying over the Carmen's River, I'd say that's a bald eagle. If it was flying over the Long Island Expressway, probably a black vulture or a turkey vulture. So migration plays a huge role as well. And we have birds that we probably will not see in the winter. Here are 3 summer birds. And let me ask everybody again, how many of these can you identify? If you put it into the chat box, how many of these local summer birds do you think you can identify? Are you getting any numbers? I mean, you don't have to write the name in, just tell me.
Looks like someone can identify 2 of them.
Okay.
I can't see the birds.
You can't see the birds.
Are you on your phone?
Yes.
You might have to swipe your image.
I got it.
Okay.
Okay, so here they are. The first one is a wood thrush, and that's robin-sized bird, maybe a little bit bigger that you would see in the woods. An osprey, which is fairly common over the Carmen's River. These were near the edge of extinction as well. But when DDT was banned, as well as eagles, the ospreys started to come back. And that's because they're apex predators. If you imagine one mosquito that's, let's say, polluted or infected with DDT, a smaller bird eats how many mosquitoes? A swallow. And then when you get an apex predator that it's eating dozens of birds who have eaten hundreds of mosquitoes, the concentration of pesticides like DDT skyrockets. And this is why these birds were driven nearly to extinction. And the third one here is the piping plover. So all of these 3 birds are gone now. They've left for southern climes for the winter. So what birds are we likely to see in the winter? Well, the bird feeder birds that I showed you earlier. This is a kind of interesting chart of all the migratory flyways. So if you notice, there is a red line right up the East Coast. So lots of birds fly straight up the coast and down the coast as they migrate north and south. We also have, I mean, there's lines all over the place. It might not mean much to you, but it shows that there are huge migrations. There are paths of migration. One of the things we benefit from on Fire Island is that in the fall and spring, we get a lot of really unusual visitors that are heading north or south, depending on the season. So there's something in migration called an eruption with the letter I. So this winter has been an eruption year. And what eruption means is that they migrate further south than usual. So the evening grosbeak and the common redpoll that you see here have been seen all over Long Island this winter. If you already subscribe to eBird or any of these birding websites, there's sightings of these every single day. And ordinarily, they would be much further north. We wouldn't see them this far south. And part of it has to do with food. usually when there's an eruption of birds, there's a bird called a pine siskin. It's usually found in the north in Canada. They're everywhere, almost 50 states in the United States right now. The reason for that is a shortage of food in the north. So they're heading further south to find food. This eruption of songbirds is due to a shortage of food. So when you're bird watching, a lot of the field guides have maps, and they suggest areas where it's more likely to see certain birds. Well, this year, it's the sky's the limit. They're seeing a lot of birds that ordinarily are not seen here on Long Island. So let's look at the birds we will see when we go to the beach or anywhere, sort of South Shore Long Island. We're going to see these birds, and here's sort of more common ones or the more usual suspects. So ducks. All right, we're going from bay to beach. We're driving over the bridge at Smith Point, and you look down in the water, and here are 4 of very common ducks in our area. Oops, didn't mean that happened. So the names of them are there. How many can you identify? How many can you match the duck with its name? Let's see, put that in the chat. Are we getting any comments?
Seal can match 3. I'll throw in I can only match 1. Rachel's got 2.
Okay, excellent, excellent. So the pair of ducks in the upper left are probably the ones most of us can identify, and these are mallards. So this bright green head and sort of a brown chest and sort of tan, the rest of the body is a male mallard. The female's sort of brownish. When she flies, you can see green patches on her wings. Another pair that we see here are greater scaup. So that pair of birds, no, made a mistake. Those are buffle heads, sorry. So buffle head, think of that head with that big white patch on it. So the male buffle head has this, it looks like a black head from a distance, but it's sort of an iridescent green with a huge white patch on it. And the female is brown with a patch on her cheek. And these are, you'll see them floating in the Great South Bay. The greater scaup is the upper right-hand corner. And these are the ones that we see flocks of 20, 40, 60, 80 on the ocean and on the bay. They're very common. They have a dark head and chest, white sides, and a gray back. If you see them up close, that back is actually white with black markings. And the female is similar to a mallard, just a darker brown. And the bird in flight is a black duck, and they're actually dark brown. And one of the clues to their identification is their yellow bill. And the female, of course, makes it really confusing because she's also brown, but her bill is sort of an olive green colored. So people who duck hunt or real serious birders can identify a lot more ducks than this. These are sort of my basic ducks that I can recognize. And if you take your binoculars to the beach and you see flocks of lots of ducks, chances are they're the greater scaup, that one in the upper right-hand corner. There's a lesser scaup, which, again, let's talk about details. His head's a little pointier, but otherwise very, very similar. It's hard to tell the size from a distance. So the keys to identifying them now are their shape, their color, and where you find them. So here are some of our long-necked water birds. And you can probably, I'd say most people here can identify 2 of them at least. So can we have another poll? Do we have, how many can you identify of these? Anybody trying to do it?
Looks like someone can identify 3.
Okay. These are all bigger birds that we'll see near the water at this time of year.
A few others can identify as well. I'm looking
Okay.
forward to hearing what they are because I think I can only do one again.
Okay. All right. So on the left is a mute swan. The mute swan is actually the largest bird in New York State at 25 pounds and a wingspan of 7 feet. So these are big birds and they can be seen year round, usually floating. Sometimes you see 1 or 2, sometimes you see 8, 10, 12, not huge flocks. These were actually introduced from Europe. These are non-native birds. They were brought by European settlers for their gardens as sort of decorative birds. And we see that they've established themselves very well. The bird next to the swan, it's another white bird. It's got a shorter neck, and you might see it at the side of the road grazing on the grass. And this is actually a snow goose. We'll see these here on Long Island in the winter. The third one over, most of you probably recognize this as a Canada goose. These are very common. There's actually a population that does no longer migrate. So these would be considered migratory birds from the north moving south. And there's still populations that do migrate. They're up in the far north of Canada. They might come down here in the winter, but lots of them never leave. All summer long, we have Canada geese. And the one on the right, we'll probably only see in the winter. This is a migrant from the north, and this is a Brandt goose, B-R-A-N-D-T. Brandt geese, we see a lot of them out at the western end of Fire Island. They're more on the grass. They'll be eating, grazing grass along the highway on the western end near the lighthouse. But they're not uncommon. They're not uncommon. All right, I had to throw this in here because one of the sort of mottos we have in the National Park Service is keep wildlife wild. So on the left, there's a family feeding mostly domestic geese and ducks. Domestic geese would be the species that are kept on farms and in parks. They are not wild. They may be not very tame. You might see them in the street or flying overhead, but they're domesticated breeds. And, they're in this park, somebody's feeding them bread. I won't ask how many people go and throw bread to the ducks and geese, but it's not a good idea. And if you see the goose on the right, he is suffering from what they call angel wing syndrome. This is caused from eating junk food. So bread is junk food to a goose. It's not good nutrition. It fills up their stomach and it gives them no nutrients that they need. And they end up with these deformities. And unfortunately, they can't fly. So once they have this angel wing, they can be rehabbed with proper food, but they're also really easy for a predator to get, a fox or something, or they're walking across the street and get hit by a car. So I would strongly recommend don't feed the wild birds or the wild waterfowl anyway. Birds at your feeder, bird seed is not such a bad thing to feed them.
So we do have a question. Is bread good
Sure.
for seagulls?
Seagulls, pretty much the same thing. It's junk food. Gulls, though, don't spend so much time in human company. You're more likely to see geese hanging around a park and being fed. If you feed a gull on the beach, watch out, because him and all his friends are going to come back looking for food. People usually, if you throw out a bag of potato chips, any individual gull is only going to grab one. It's still not good. It's still not good to feed any wild birds, shorebirds, anything, because a gull ordinarily, his normal food is seafood. If you throw him a fish, that's different. But most bread, especially, even for humans, I hate to say it, it's not the best nutrition. If you ate white bread all day long, it's not very healthy. So let's see what else we're going to see. So we've driven over the bridge to Fire Island, or we've taken a boat over. And on the dock, on the pilings, here's some of the birds we might see. And I'm going to tell you, I'm not going to identify all of them, okay? Because gulls are really tough to identify. If you look at the two gulls in the top pictures with the brown speckles on them, I would challenge even an expert birder to identify them unless they knew the flock they were with. And they are juvenile, probably juvenile herring gulls. So the herring gull is that adult bird in the lower left. And most gulls take 2 to 3 years to get their adult plumage. So their first year, a lot of them are mostly brown. Their second year, they're starting to get their adult plumage. Here they've got sort of gray back feathers, still a lot of brown. Can be confusing. So it's not really until their third year that you can make a good solid identification on a lot of gulls. So you can get your field guide out. You can really try. There's a few really common ones, but herring gulls are the only ones that are really positive identification here. Often seen on the pilings or on the dock together with the gulls is this blackbird on the right. And that is a double-crested cormorant. Double-crested cormorant is a seabird. It's a diving fishing bird. So interestingly, you may see them on the dock or on the jetty with their wings spread out, and they have to dry their wings. Unlike other ducks and gulls that float, most ducks have an oil gland, and they spread this oil all over their feathers. The oil sort of waterproofs them, gives them a waterproof, buoyant coating. And the cormorant, because it dives, does not have this oil coating. So its feathers are not waterproofed. So when it comes up from a dive, it's got to stand there with its wings spread in order to dry them out. And that's a fairly common sight. And this is really the only cormorant that we see around here. Florida has anhingas, which are really similar in shape, same family. So just to show you how tough it is to identify gulls, the greater black-backed gull is very common. Okay, he's the biggest gull we have. He's got a black back instead of a gray back. But look at these two birds. One of them is the greater black-backed gull, and one of them is the lesser black-backed gull. So I challenge anybody here to tell me the difference. Anybody know the difference? If not, that's okay. I learned this from a birder who came into the visitor center really excited. He's seen some lesser black-backed gulls and showed me pictures. And I said, well, how do you tell? Well, the one with the pink legs on the right is the greater black-backed gull. They are here year-round. They're year-round residents. It's the biggest gull you'll see on our beaches most times. The one on the left, which is the lesser black-backed gull, has yellow legs. So look at the difference, yellow versus pink. And they actually came all the way from Iceland. So if you see one of these guys, big black-backed gull with yellow legs, he's an Icelandic visitor. So that's kind of neat. So gulls, this is where I end with gulls because they're really tough to identify. Get out your field guide, give it a try. It's challenging. Here's a bird.
One question about gulls.
Absolutely.
Probably due to the tough identification, but our question is, we never seem to see seagull nests or baby gulls. Is there a reason for that?
Great. That's a great question. They actually nest on the shore. And there are many, many of them in hidden little places in the salt marsh. So if you live in the Mastic Shirley area, or even the sort of the greater South Shore area, you may be familiar with an island that's out there in the bay called John Boyle Island. If you drive over the bridge to Smith Point, it's over on your right. If you stand near the water at the Smith Point Marina, or even in anywhere in Bellport, Brookhaven, look south, there's a little island out there. And some people actually call it Bird Island. And I've made the mistake of going a little too close in my boat, and what a racket, because this is where the gulls nest. There's lots of them there, gulls, terns, actually ibis, and egrets all nest on this island. There's a couple of trees. Most of it is just grass and sand, but they do nest sort of in out of the way places on the ground. And the chicks are about the size of a softball. Just fuzzy little things. They're cute, but boy, do they make a racket if you're anywhere near the nest. Okay, any more questions at this point? Or are we good?
Looks like we're good for now.
Okay. All right, I'm going to go back over here. So this is a beautiful bird that we see here in the winter on Fire Island, and it's a snow bunting. And if you've never seen one, they fly around in flocks, just like this, small flocks, 10, 12 birds. And when they're resting, they almost look like a sparrow. They look like a small brown bird. And when they fly, and this is why I've provided a photo of them in flight, they have white underneath their wings. So they're beautiful little sparrow-like birds. Maybe tough to identify when they're sitting, but fairly easy to identify when they are flying. Here's another one, and I put its name out there. It's known as a harrier or a marsh hawk. These will be flying over the dunes on Fire Island. They usually eat rodents, maybe small snakes. And I actually had one the other day chasing the shorebirds on the beach. So they're hungry, they're looking for food, and an interesting way to identify these. Now, the hawks that we see are there's smaller hawks that are tough to identify. If we're looking at birds of prey, the bald eagle is pretty special. We have red-tailed hawks around Long Island. If you see a sort of a big hawk, it's probably a red-tailed hawk. This one is a little smaller than a red-tailed hawk, and it also carries its wings in flight in a V shape. So instead of level flight, and this photo is a little tough to see, it's deceiving. They don't carry their wings level when they fly, but up in a V. And if you look at the rump, it's got this white patch. So if it circles around and you see the back of it, it's pretty easy to identify. Was there a question? I thought I saw.
Yes, there is a question. Is Osprey in the hawk family?
Yes, it is. Well, let's call them birds of prey or raptors. There's a couple of different families in the raptor group, but this is what we'll call them, raptors or birds of prey. Yes, they are birds of prey, and they're pretty cool too. We won't see them around in the winter so much, but they're a diving hawk, sometimes known as a sea eagle. And their wings, when they fly, almost have an angle to them like a gull. So if you think of a gull overhead, most of us can picture what a gull looks like flying. It's got an angle to its wing. The osprey has an angle to its wing too. But you'd see the wingtips separate, like you see this harrier, rather than a gull, which sort of has the wings, the feathers at the wingtips all together. So I hope that answered your question. So these are fairly, not common, but not uncommon to see. This is the most likely candidate. If you're on Fire Island or on the South Shore of Long Island, near the marsh, anywhere near the water, this is probably the hawk that you're seeing.
Very good. One more question about ospreys. Do the ospreys go back to the same nests?
Yes, they do. Or a nearby nest. So imagine if they've hatched two chicks Everybody comes back in the spring. They're going to look for homes near their parents or near where they were hatched. So along the Carmen's River, there's probably about 15 osprey nests. And it's assumed that the same ones come back. And I don't know if you know this, they go to Brazil. Most of the osprey from our area winter in Brazil, where unfortunately the fishermen there shoot them because they're afraid they're eating their fish. So other countries, different rules and legislation. But yes, they usually return to the same area. And I guess if their nest is available, they'll take it. An interesting thing, lots of people put up posts with, flat area at the top, the osprey sort of platforms that we see all over. And ospreys will choose these, but if there's no high spot, they'll nest right on the ground as well, probably in the woods. But they nest on the ground if there's no suitable platform for them. Just a little factoid. Okay, when we go over to the beach, when you're on Fire Island on the beach, you see a lot of little shorebirds, and they're tough to identify. They don't stand still long enough for you to get your field guide out or even train your binoculars on them. But all the birds we see here are Sanderlings. These are the very most common birds. They have big flocks. They're the ones that run up and down. As the waves come in, they run up the beach. As the waves go out, they run out the beach. They're eating small invertebrates out of the sand. Think of the beach version of insects, little arthropods that are in the sand. This is what they're eating, and they're picking them out of the sand as the waves recede. So Sanderling, looking at what we expect to see, this is what we're going to see most of. But you're going to see a few different ones in there. So here we have a mixed flock of, these are mostly Dunlin. So it's D-U-N-L-I-N. Dunlin are very similar to Sanderlings, a little bit darker, a little bit bigger. And if you look at their beaks, it kind of curves up. So this would be a usual suspect. You can get it by gist because it's a little bigger than the Sanderlings it's mixed in with. And that sort of outlier in there, it's a lot darker, is a red knot. So red knots are also, hang on. Yes, it's a red knot. They come here to breed. Through the winter, you may see them on and off. So shorebirds are tricky. Again, to know what you expect to see. Loads of people look at a flock of birds like this, and they're around summer and winter, remember. So in the summer, everyone thinks they want to see a piping plover. They say, oh, I saw this giant flock of 100 piping plovers on the beach. That's very unlikely because piping plovers we see in singles or doubles, and they're closer to the dune most times. And they're sort of fat and round. We saw a picture earlier in the presentation. So the piping plovers will actually start to come back in March to breed and find nesting spots. But they're all down on the Gulf Coast of Florida and Costa Rica, the islands down there. That's where the piping plovers are at this time of year. So these are sort of the common shorebirds we'll see. Now, I saved this one for last, and this is a really special bird, and lots of people want to see it. I'm sure, let me see how many people, just raise your hand or say yes in the chat box if you can identify this. So yes, we have a raised hand. I'm sure we've got some, I'm sure you can see some comments, Tara. People know what this is. Okay, so this is a winter visitor to Fire Island. It's a snowy owl. So again, in this family of raptors or birds of prey, and they blend in so well with their surroundings. If you noticed, I don't have a really good picture of them because it's tough. If you took a picture of it and it's a really good picture, you have a really good telephoto lens. Here's a hint. If you're walking on the beach and you look up at the dunes, they're whiter than the sand. So in the snow, forget it. They're really tough to find in the snow. But if there's no snow on the ground, you might look for something that's sitting on the ground, just a little bit whiter than the beach. And there's an eruption of snowy owls going on. And the reason for their eruption is different from the pine siskins and the grosbeak and the other ones we looked at. They are other birds, most other songbirds that are traveling further south than normal are traveling there because of a lack of food. There's not enough food for them in their normal habitat, their normal range in the Arctic, so they're going further and further south to look for food. We see eruption of songbirds when there's been fires, and all those fires in California and through Canada in the north, and there's not enough food, they move further south. Snowy owls, it's a little bit different, the reason. It's because the past summer was a really good summer for lemmings. So up in the Arctic, the population of snowy owls is very closely tied to their food. Okay, it's always about the food. So the snowy owls found so much food over the summer. There's a population explosion. There's a population explosion of snowy owls. So in order to have a range where they can hunt and feed, they keep moving south. They don't want to, if they're too crowded, there's not enough food for them. So they keep moving south. And there was a very unexpected snowy owl in the news. And here's another one. How many people heard about that? I'd love to see a yes from how many people heard about the snowy owl. Or hands raised if I can see them. Yeah. So there was actually a snowy owl in January in Central Park, which is crazy. I mean, when you think about it, these are birds that live in the Arctic, but everybody's looking for a place to hunt. It happened to be on a ball field, pretty far away from where people could, and dogs and, things that would cause them to fly away. So it stayed there for a day or so, as far as I understand. And when we see an eruption of snowy owls, they are not the starving birds that you might see the common redpoll are coming down here. These are well-fed birds. They're just looking for hunting grounds, not so close to their neighbors. So more about the great backyard bird count. Do we have questions?
Yeah, we had one question about the snowy owl. Is it nocturnal?
I don't have a good answer to that. We see them mostly during the day sitting. I would expect they do hunt at night like most owls. But I don't have a positive answer to that. So if anybody here is a better birder than I am and knows that answer, I hope they would put the answer in the chat, because I'm not sure. Something to research. Okay, so I'm going to stop this and pick out another one. Bear with me one second. Okay, bear with me just a second. Okay, so here is just oh boy. Well, I can't get to, because of the bar on the bottom. All right, well, you're going to get to see my whole screen. That's okay. So from February 12th to 15th, we have the Great Backyard Bird Count, which is global. Okay, we talked about this a little bit at the beginning. So eBird has awesome programs that you can look at. You can count birds wherever you are, wherever you like, and for 15-minute increments. Okay, so why do people participate in this? Now, this is kind of fun. You want to make sure that there's a good picture for scientists, and they can't be everywhere. So it's a fun thing to do and to participate in this whole effort. You can participate from anywhere. You can, sorry, there we go. If you go to eBird or the Merlin app, you can make a personal bird list. People have life lists of the birds they've seen in their life. So a lot of people are really into birding, and scientists learn more about migration, more about changes from year to year. This is how they know it's an eruption year, because people like you, like me, go out and count the birds and enter the data. So we count birds for 15 minutes. Keep track of the time and make your best estimate. And each day or each period of counting needs a different list or a new checklist. So if you're really interested, you can go to this birdcount.org. And there's a lot more information there. This is a good website to look on. This PowerPoint is on there, so you can go through all this stuff. You can make an account. And if you've participated in any of these other things, whether it's eBird or Merlin, or there's a feeder watch, you can participate because you've already got an account. And it's just showing you quickly here that, there are drop-down menus, and they might give you the usual candidates in your area, in your location. And this is pretty cool because as you enter the data, it pops up on the map. So that's really, really fun part of it. This is just showing the drop-downs again, and one of the checklists. A lot of this is electronic. You just put tick marks or numbers in the blocks, and just more pictures of. So there is the that's the website to where you can go on. You have a couple of days before it starts to get all your data in there. And let me give you my. I want to find this out, go back to where we were. Okay, so the Great Backyard Bird Count, and this is our program. So Fire Island National Seashore's program is this Saturday at 8 in the morning. You must register. So if you think you want to call and try to get in on ours and then go to the library ones later, you can do all that. Just make sure you write down the information and register and get back a confirmation email. So any questions? That's sort of the end of the presentation.
Great. We do have one question.
Look at the chat.
What is the
Sure.
what is the most popular bird on Long Island?
Popular or common? I mean, for me, a bald eagle, that's top of my list for popular, as I really want to see it. We have a lot of different kinds of sparrows on Long Island. These, and again, there are 20 or 30 species. I don't know which is the most common. I know that house sparrows are very, very common. And they're actually non-native, which is crazy. They've really found a niche here on Long Island and all over the United States. But the most common is, that's another one. I'm sorry, I don't have the exact answer to that.
That's okay. You had some great answers already. We're good.
Okay.
Any other questions? We have a lot of thank yous. Oh,
Okay.
we do have a question. Where
Okay.
do wood ducks migrate from?
Oh, most of our summer residents, if they've migrated from the north, they've come from northern Canada. Many of ours, not all of them, come from the Arctic Circle. Again, that's one that you'd have to look in a field guide. You could probably find out in any field guide, or you could Google it exactly where they come from. Wood ducks are really neat because they nest in cavities in trees, which is pretty fabulous. If you do a little research online, you can find videos of wood ducks the day that their mother kicks them all out of the nest, and they just come dropping out of the hole in the tree. It's pretty amazing that they sort of bounce and keep going. I saw a question about the osprey. When do osprey come back to Long Island? Probably April. We'll start to see them again in April. When I see an osprey in December, which I have, I always assume it's from much further north. So our resident osprey may start to leave in October, but we'll still see migrants from further north passing through to feed in good spots like the Carmen's River. So usually April, we start to see them again. Any other questions?
All right, I'm not seeing any.
Well, I hope everybody is inspired to count the birds this weekend. Do a little bit of research online, and it can be done by anybody. You don't have to identify every bird. They want a count of what you do see and what you do know. Field guides are really good to have, and it's fun to keep a field guide. I keep my life list in my field guide. I pretty much write on the pages when I've seen something and when, if it's unusual and I'm seeing it for the first time. But, well, some really good questions. Thanks for hanging in, everybody.
Thank you. Before you go, we have one last quick question. Do European starlings normally stay in winter? We've had some.
Yes, they do. Yeah, we'll see them year round, yes.
Very good, very good. Thank you, Pat. On a programming note, I'd like to add that along with the Great Backyard Bird Count at the Wilderness Center with Pat and the park rangers, our library is also having a Great Backyard Bird Count. That would be after the one at the Wilderness Center. The Wilderness Center one is at 8 a.m. The library's bird count at Wordstime will start at 12 p.m. You can find both information about those bird counts in the library's calendar. You can visit our website at communitylibrary.org/programs. Go to our Winter Birding on Fire Island for the email link to email Pat to attend their bird count, and then you can look at our program for Saturday, February 13th for the Wertheim bird count. And then coming up next month, we are having Pat back to show us, to have us explore Fire Island's sunken forest. That program will be on Wednesday, March 10th at 7 o'clock. Right here on Zoom. I hope you can join us. We are trying to have these programs monthly, so a preview after that. We heard Pat talk about the piping plovers. She will be back in April to talk to us about them. So if that's it, I'd like to thank you all for coming. I hope to see you at the Backyard Bird Count, and thank you, Pat, so much for all the information. It was a great presentation.
You're very welcome. Thanks, everybody, for logging in.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Have a good night.